Well, good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you're dialing in from, and welcome to Tech Talks webinars hosted by Technology Evaluation Centres. My name again is Paul Kinnenwith, and I will be moderating this webinar. And first and foremost, once again, I hope everyone listening is keeping well and in good health. So last week, we held a roundtable introduction to the series featuring guests from our Infor partner Godlan, Sage, and NetSuite, which you can now view on demand. And it was a great conversation, and I think it was a really great kickstart to our series. But today, we're really here to extend that discussion about the current challenges and opportunities confronting manufacturers, and to investigate really how digital transformation can optimize the operations. This second session, we're rejoined once again by Ron Clance from Infor partner Godlan, as well as two of his colleagues from Infor Direct. And they're going to go deeper into what digital transformation looks like in a manufacturing context. We'll cover how it enhances data accessibility and what it really means to scale analytics across the organizations. We'll also discuss some concrete examples of how digital transformation actually transforms business. I'll introduce our speakers in just a moment, but first a little bit about tech and myself, so you know where we're coming from. So Technology Evaluation Centres is an impartial evaluation and selection firm who has and continues to help our clients globally assess their current software application landscape and to evaluate and select best fit enterprise software across all domains and industries to ensure that they maintain their competitive advantage. And I've been working as a senior project manager and selection evangelist with tech for the past 13 years and have spent some significant time in the manufacturing sector. Well, that's enough about me. We'll move on to our primary speakers. First, I'd like to introduce you to Nick Castellina, who is Infor's VP Go-to-Market Management with a focus on discrete manufacturing. He works across internal and external domains to define and communicate Infor strategy using his understanding of the challenges that manufacturers face and how those challenges can be impacted through digital transformation. So welcome, Nick. Great to have you on today.
Nice to be here.
Thanks. Secondly, off screen for the moment, but very definitely present, is Mike Kalinowski, who is a senior manager for Infor OS product development. And he helps lead product development and strategy around Infor's data platform, including the data lake, data catalog, and data transformation tools. He drives the development of cloud-based technologies around data scalability, governance, and delivery that helps enterprises solve real-world challenges in analytics and related areas. Nice to have you, Mike.
Pleasure. Thanks very much, Paul.
And finally, a re-welcome back to Ron Clance, who is the Senior EVP of Business Strategy at Godlan, or an Infor Gold Channel Partner. Ron has over 25 years experience supporting prospects, customers, and internal sales teams. He's helped over 500 manufacturing companies to challenge their status quo and compete better in the global marketplace. So welcome back, Ron.
Thanks, Paul.
Good to have you all on board. So, you know, I think the concept of today's webinar and content is fairly clear, but let's ground ourselves first and let's talk about digital transformation as a concept. Let's understand it. I think it's a term that we're hearing and has gained so much traction throughout an enterprise application space. But then let's migrate it, let's understand it, let's migrate and contextualize it within the manufacturing environment. And then let's ask the question as to, are there other elements that we should consider and recognize as we open this discussion? And so maybe I'm going to open that first segment to Nick to really lead the charge on that.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. And to really touch on what you just asked. Really kind of want to define what digital transformation actually is. Really, it's about changing the experiences that you have internally with your customers, with data, with your people internally, your supply chain, to really differentiate your business and those experiences. So when you think about the implementation of software, there's really two sides of it. There's automation, helping you to execute on products more or projects or processes more effectively. But there's also that differentiation, which is really the part of digital transformation. So, for example, going from being able to automate the quoting process, and being able to, immediately and from an automated standpoint, make calculations for how much a product's going to cost, to actually enabling a customer to go and visit a portal where they can configure that product, see what it's going to look like, see how much it's going to cost, understand where they're going to get it, when they're going to get it, and maybe even pay for it right there. That's an experience, and that's what really digital transformation is all about across your entire organization. So, Rod, if you go to the next slide, really kind of want to talk about in the context of Industry 4.0, and really that's why digital transformation is so important. As a manufacturer, if you're unfamiliar with the term Industry 4.0, well, what that really is the fourth industrial revolution. And within this revolution, it's really all about connectivity, connecting your people, your processes, your partners, your supply chain, and your customers, so you can make better decisions based on the data that's available to you. And the things that are really driving this digital transformation are these Industry 4.0 drivers. For many manufacturers, they've reached their limits in productivity, where they're not able to meet the demand that's coming from customers across the entire world. They need to be better at utilizing their assets, managing their supply chain, managing their workforce to react to that demand and actually make the money that is out there as an opportunity for them. You have new business models emerging for manufacturers, maybe moving from a purely product-based model to a more services-based model, or even taking on some of these new business models such as subscription or build by consumption. Well, to be able to do that, you need to be able to have those back-end systems that enable that through digital transformation. You have improved connectivity and smart manufacturing, ultimately having that goal of lights out manufacturing, being able to connect your machines to draw data off of those machines and automate movement on the shop floor. The enablement of cloud computing and making it possible to share data globally is a significant driver of digital transformation. Being able to collaborate across the world, being able to share data with your extended supply chain, belonging to supply chain networks, for example, is a huge way that your organization can transform digitally to become more effective. And then lastly, you have the new generation of workers and how they demand connectivity. For so many of the manufacturers on the phone here today, they are challenged by the manufacturing skills gap, where more people are leaving the manufacturing workforce than necessarily coming in. And that whole new generation of workers that may have been scared off from working in a manufacturing plant is looking to go work at a place that is digitally mature with technology that mocks what they use in their day-to-day lives, that is really what they want to use when they go to work. So having that type of digital transformation is only going to be another valuable tool for recruitment and retention of that key workforce. So Ron, if you go to the next slide, there's really a few components that really enable digital transformation in Industry 4.0. There's the cloud and that data availability. There's AI and machine learning, being able to leverage that machine learning and the information contained within your business systems to augment decision making and automate tasks when paired with workflows. Networks, when it comes to your external network and belonging to places where you can collaborate more effectively with your suppliers and maybe even your regulators. IoT, drawing data off the machinery within your business. And then integration across all your various systems, and then analytics to actually draw valuable, relevant insight off the data contained within those systems so you can become more effective within Industry 4.0. And Ron, if you go to the next slide, there's really a whole bunch of opportunities for optimization across your entire organization. If you click forward one more time, you can see how there are opportunities for digital transformation across your entire organization, from augmenting your workforce through manufacturing execution and supply chain collaboration, through how you are optimizing maintenance of your assets, and all the way around to how you are delivering more innovative products and experiences for your customers. That's what digital transformation is all about. Ron, and before Ron, one more slide before I pass it over to you to make a few comments. It's all about putting a platform into place, and you can learn about what a platform for digital transformation would look like by working with us here at Infor and with the Godlan team. But it's really all about having that platform to sit below everything that I talked about earlier. A platform for Industry 4.0 with integration, extensibility, collaboration, IoT and AI that sits under all of your applications so that you can ensure that you are always up to date and able to take advantage of this emerging technology to compete in a modern environment. And then you have your very specific operational applications that help you to, again, do that automation I talked about at the beginning, is really going to enable you to become more effective within this industry. So hopefully that answers your question, but I'd like to hear some of Ron's comments on this topic as well, because I know his company sees a whole bunch of this stuff too.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. You're exactly right. This is an area to where in the projects and the engagement over the last 6 months, been engaged with a lot of manufacturers that are going through a dynamic upheaval, as I call it. COVID has placed upon them a need to set a new order of priorities. That order of priorities is about taking this type of capability. They want to reduce the complexity of their platforms, all these different applications that are not connected the way they should. They have to automate. We have got to do more with less. People are needing to work remote. So where Nick mentioned that these platforms need to be modern, just the capability of how mobility needed to come into the play, because a lot of customers and manufacturers were not ready for kind of taking their internal virtual private networks and making those to some degree more public, like modern applications you access just over a web browser, right? So these dynamics have placed new challenges on manufacturers, but it changed priorities, it changes the need for automation strategically, and they want to make their environments a lot safer, and they want to make them a lot less complex. And those are the projects that we're seeing right now that are forefront on everybody's list. They're going through reevaluations. They're having to take and look at reprioritization and putting some of these projects now at the top where they used to be 2 or 3 down on the strategic list. All right.
Pardon me, I'm just fighting with my mute button there for a second.
No problem, Paul.
You know what? This is the team's world. Fight with your mute button for a second. Thank you for that, gentlemen. I think, we talk about just the sheer volume of data that we're trying to work with. We're trying to understand where it's coming from, the disparate data coming from disparate solutions, and how can we use that in order to obviously be better, more efficient, and more productive in the COVID world. But really, as we discussed last week, this is the way that our world is turning. It's about accessibility, and it really leads on to the next question and the next primary topic, which is, how does this digital transformation change accessibility to data, given all of the discussion points you'd brought up before? So I'm going to hand that one over to Mike.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. So let's go ahead and jump into the next slide to help kind of wrap our arms around sort of the scale of the problem that we're really looking at, because I think it helps to contextualize what the trends in the industry, especially the enterprise industry, look like over the coming years. And what we've done is put together sort of a high-level fact sheet just to kind of really put your mind around really the volume of information that companies are increasingly generating through manufacturing lines, through back office systems, and so on. And so a zettabyte being 1,000 terabytes, or rather petabytes, is an extraordinary wealth of information. And by the next 5 years, we're anticipating that nearly 200 zettabytes of data are going to be created on an annual basis. And to be perfectly honest, this was a lot of reporting and analysis that was done prior to COVID. With that transition of more enterprises working remotely and staging their workloads in the cloud, I wouldn't be surprised to see that number gradually trending upwards, and actually not even gradually, but accelerating upwards over the next few years with this new innovation strategies that are built around remote working and remote context for productivity. But the takeaways here is that increasingly we're seeing more and more of this data being captured to the cloud and accessible to a variety of services, applications, vendors. And so it offers a very intriguing opportunity, especially with companies generating nearly double the amount of data on an annual basis that they previously did through growth of operations, but also novel ways of managing the data that they're actually generating through their common systems. And so very often what we see are customers over the last 20 years building out traditional and conventional data warehousing strategies, highly curated data models that help them understand how the business is performing. And if we can go to the next slide here, help them understand how their businesses are performing, but it helps them really answer questions that they already well understand. They just want to paint a picture with visualizations, statistics, dashboards, and so on. And that's been a very effective means of running organizations for the last 20 or so odd years. But what we're seeing is that now with a lot of these cloud technologies and managed services underpinning a lot of the innovation strategies for vendors in the market, this approach towards capturing more data has become increasingly important. And so the ability to actually stage and retain that data, even if it doesn't present an obvious use case today, may present dividends down the road when it comes time to building out machine learning models, AI, and other manufacturing related capabilities with respect to a lot of these new cloud-based innovations. And so underpinning that is a technology solution need where you need to be able to scale with that level of data generation throughout your enterprise. So with an increasing number of enterprise applications, IoT devices, shop floor integration, as well as people and things constantly chattering and generating information, both structured and semi-structured, the need for a scalable data platform that can cope with that level of information gathering really presents an obvious need to be addressed. And so gradually we're starting to see that a lot of enterprises are first and foremost investing in data lake strategies and architectures to ensure that at the very least they have a place to store all that information, all their analytics information or pre-prepared analytics information, manufacturing data, back office, ERP, and so on, so that they have a place that they can expose to a variety of audiences and consumers to help drive their enterprise data consumption strategies. So the reason why this is a pivotal innovation and an evolution from where we've currently been sitting for the last 10 or so odd years is that we're now looking at how can we use data as a service rather than just simply as an end result for an analytics or reporting operation and a strategy here. And so that might be geared towards addressing specific needs for, let's say, functional users in the enterprise, but data lakes really crack the door open for being able to involve more parts of the organization, from data scientists to BI developers, business analysts, even functional users for self-service type of operations, to be able to start grabbing data that's always persisted and being stored in something like a data lake strategy to help drive their novel data development use cases. And so if we go to the next slide here. So you'll often hear this, and this is a shop-worn trope at this point, but data being the new oil, really a lot of enterprises are starting to identify that really one of the most important factors is keeping your hands on that information and the data that you're generating, because then you can use that to pivot towards feeding maybe first stage your analytics operations, but then reusing that data to generate additional ROI by feeding that into machine learning platforms and AI models, and using that data that you're capturing on a daily basis to feed into training algorithms, for example. And so what we're finding in the market is that customers that are starting to invest and involve themselves in these large-scale digital transformations and making that investment to start that data capture are finding that on the consumption end, with analytics, reporting capabilities, with other value-add service applications or SaaS-based add-ons, what they're seeing is that they're getting a much higher satisfaction rating in terms of data quality as well as data verboseness and fidelity. And so that makes for a much more enriched experience in terms of what the information is actually telling them and what they're actually able to interrogate and answer questions for. And next slide. And this is also really rounded out through this concept of evergreening, which is a term that's really taken off from Microsoft a couple of years ago. And that is, as increasingly we move more and more of these workloads up and into the cloud, and we start to provide more natural citizen-based tooling to better understand, manage, and deal with the scale of data and data transformation, then it's about being able to focus more on the content creation and the content generation, and being able to focus on creating value in terms of the information that you're reporting on, rather than the ETL pipelines that are required to move that data and massage that data. And so increasingly what we're seeing is an approach towards evergreening the enterprise and these concepts around data platform, data strategy, and large-scale data capture here. And that opens the door for us to be able to start looking at, well, how do we provision data models, content, big data, data dictionaries, for example, and then immediately push that out in a very Facebook-like model on a monthly or a quarterly cadence, so that enterprise customers are getting the latest in terms of data evolution models, understanding how to actually work with and interrogate and process that data, and so on. And so that comes with and also a side benefit of new innovation being delivered to the cloud on a monthly or quarterly basis, with new updates and new capabilities, new security protocols being invested and invented, and being able to co-opt that into the core platform makes for a very, very compelling strategy in terms of offloading a lot of the traditional infrastructure related jobs associated with conventional data management measures. So with that, I'll take a deep breath here, and certainly Ron, I'm sure that you have a couple of opinions here with respect to a lot of the big data initiatives that we have that we've covered over here, but I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Excellent. You're exactly right, Mike. This, when we really boil this down into a very, simplistic approach, is now with enterprise applications having kind of built-in analytics as part of a platform, to where they've taken the complexity out of, what historically was data mining, or, you've got to have your super power users to go out and try to connect the data. That's a problem with just sometimes the enterprise software, but then you get the connected network of your supply chain, your customers, maybe you've got extended CRM, or you've got extended maintenance, right? And then so every system adds exponentially more complexity to how do we mine that data then for the company, so we can truly manage by exception. And then the data is being served to every user through every level of the organization, to where they all have the power to manage by exception. And that's the companies that we see are really taking this, doing some very creative things, and really operating at a very, very high level, of the folks that are kind of seeing that, getting out in front, and are taking advantage of these latest capabilities.
Ron, I could not agree more with what you're saying with regards to where folks are coming from today, the assessments that I'm working with today. Almost everything you mentioned there is sort of front and center of, number one, their driver for change, and two, the impact to their current operation and efficiency that goes along with it. So I very, very much understand that comment, and thank you, Mike, for bringing us to a level of data understanding that is really the future. So, okay, let's move on to our next subject matter. This is obviously a deck and a discussion point which is building. We've talked a lot about the volume of data, the impact of data, how that feeds, that traditional data mining reporting mechanism. But let's talk a little bit about scaling analytics across the organization. It's one of the other concepts that is gaining traction. And maybe, Mike, can you explain to us exactly what that means?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different contexts, and I think that this question also dovetails quite neatly into, from the previous one into this one as well, because I think with the first question, it's really identifying the importance and the criticality of data as sort of that central combining factor for a lot of the value add decisions and operations downstream. that allows us or puts us in a position to think about how do we actually start scaling up analytics throughout the organization in a variety of ways. And the first that I'll highlight is that increasingly in the industry, we're starting to see that there is an ever growing need for more real-time and streaming capabilities. And so streaming analytics is a hot topic across all of the big vendors in terms of the infrastructure as a service vendors. And so that ability to operationalize data in flight and actually start using that to make decisions about, for example, workforce management, or it could be something like manufacturing and the repair and work order generation for a machine that's about to go down. Being able to operationalize data that's actually moving as it's getting generated is becoming increasingly important throughout the organizations, especially in that shop floor and manufacturing space. But I think the other aspect of this to consider is also the breadth of information that's being generated by an increasing number of applications, especially as we see in these cloud-based systems oftentimes, and this is just a broadsheet overview of what we have at Infor, but suffice to say, we have a huge portfolio of applications that are constantly generating information, both through background processes, reconciliation tasks, as well as end users that are constantly entering in new data and data updates on an hourly basis. And so the stream and the frequency of information that needs to be captured is tremendous. And very often, most organizations have not just one enterprise application, but a litany of applications that are all working in concert together to run the business. So each one of them are generating and provide a source of truth and a source of data to generate information and insights. By consolidating that into a single data platform strategy, what this then pivots an organization to allow them to do is then start to think about how can we now develop contextualized information, reports, and assets that we can start to weave throughout the enterprise experience so that people can be exposed to more of these analytical concepts and analytics KPIs throughout the course of a normal working business day. So rather than analytics being an end user application and something that I go into and I click on print and report, or I just simply check my dashboards to see how everything is performing as of that moment, rather it's about, and if we can jump to the next slide here, it's about weaving that scaling analytics concept into how functional users operate in a day-to-day fashion. And so what we see here is just something that we're working on at Infor to help kind of realize a lot of that value. Because when I'm working in an enterprise application screen, doing data entry tasks, filing a new work order or a maintenance request or an RMA, oftentimes I may not be privy, or I may need to context switch to other applications in order to inform me about a decision. How am I going to complete this work order? What are my inventory values as I'm generating this type of business transaction? And that's often very challenging to do in a single threaded context. Oftentimes you're having to pivot and toggle in and out of different experiences in order to do what should be a fairly remedial task. And so at Infor, we're actually investing very heavily into really dissolving the boundaries and the lines between just simply an enterprise application workflow and the contextual information that hovers around that center of gravity. And so by being able to visualize those analytics in context of a business process and being able to pin and create new types of information that can complement that process and then pull that up through sliding dashboards that are paned or pinned side by side with the actual operative workflow, provides a new level of scaling that makes for a much more productive employee and productive enterprise. And not only that, just their general satisfaction also becomes much higher and much greater because it becomes much more seamless and easy to do their job without having to struggle through really identifying all the key prerequisites to actually accomplishing a given task. So it's a tremendous productivity argument. A lot of this is driven by data capture and the volume of information that's being generated. But in using and pairing these concepts of big data as well as the actual usability interface and being able to then scale that analytics into common everyday workflows and personas is a huge and thrilling challenge for a lot of vendors in the market to be able to address, because that's really where you're going to be able to generate a lot of return on investment in terms of productivity, satisfaction, but also accuracy of the information and the transactions that are being generated throughout the enterprise. So Ron, what are your thoughts on this?
In a real world example, Mike, you're dead on. There's a couple of things that come to mind of some recent, projects I've been engaged with. For example, an industrial IoT project that I've been engaged with for the last 3 years of bringing a kind of a new IoT solution to the platform. Machines, they generate an enormous amount of data. That's a lot of chatter, like you said. I love the word chatter. There's a lot of chatter in that. The challenge is when you look at that raw data unrefined, there seems to be not much value there. But if that data taken and then contextualized and then formatted in a way that various process and consumers throughout the enterprise, thus connected, can be placed into an environment where we can do streaming analytics, now that data becomes very, very powerful. Also in light of COVID, because of all the challenges that manufacturers are looking for more lights out manufacturing capability, where it's automated CNCs or robots, these environments to where machines are controlling an enormous amount or element of the manufacturing process. Well, manufacturers want to lean on that capability and the precision that comes with that, but be able to harness that data, where that data is utilized to go into predictive analytics. So then that is streamed live to various maintenance personnel when we start to get out of control before we get into producing scrap, for example. An example also is where we get into a scenario that that health of a machine can also be a predictive indicator to analytics that we may have an unplanned downtime situation, right? Well, manufacturers know that unplanned downtime costs them millions of dollars. So utilize data, contextualize it, streaming it, and then do it in a way that we can harness the power of that through every thread of the organization. That's just a very simple example that can be expanded out to probably every automation opportunity within a manufacturing enterprise. But analytics, streaming analytics, power and capability of technology for connections, those are all the enablement elements, if you will, to start this transformation journey.
Thanks, folks. So, I think I'm sure that you are whetting the appetite of our audience with regards to the opportunities that exist for a future state as it relates to, their data, a potential transformation, but the expansion and enhancement and leveraging of that data. Let's open up that discussion a little bit more with regards to, what are the opportunities? What are the transformation outcomes and workforces that are there? Ron, you've given some really great real-world examples. Nick, I'm going to ask you, as we've talked and developed these ideas, for your thoughts on where these really sit.
Sure. Yeah, and I want to go back to those kind of 4 key areas that I talked about earlier in this presentation: the workforce, the processes, which is really supply chain and finance, the assets, and the customer. Just to give you kind of a high level of some of the types of transformations that organizations can go through, and then really pass it over to Ron for a more specific example of a customer we've worked with and what they've done. But just, start thinking across those 4 key areas, right? When it comes to the workforce, for example, being able to provide relevant, timely data through role-based dashboards to the end user, so they can easily find the information they need to do their jobs rather than having to go across multiple different systems, being, forced to rely on old data, being forced to manually enter and access data. Again, just having a dashboard like you see here on screen and like what Mike shared as well to really become more effective. Also, some of the ways you can leverage data is to, for example, take advantage of analytics-driven assessments so that you can identify and attract and ultimately retain and utilize the top talent that's going to be most effective in the roles that you're looking to hire for. And also being able to provide data to employees where they're doing their job. for example, manufacturers, as they move into these services-based business models, being able to look right on your phone and access all the information you need to improve things like first-time fix is just a few of the ways that you can help to optimize your workforce through digital transformation. And Ron, if you go to the next slide, when we start thinking about your supply chain, your finances, and really the processes across your entire organization, think about providing shop floor visibility to achieve that smart manufacturing. I think both me and Ron mentioned the ultimate goal of lights out manufacturing, and being able to pull data from your machinery and from your various systems into one place, and then leverage some of those digital platforms to automate decision making and movement is another way to optimize. Consolidation of your business systems into one single centralized single source of truth, another way to become more effective. But really, it's about leveraging those new types of things like AI and machine learning to understand how your end users are utilizing solutions and the data contained within those solutions, and how they're executing on workflows, where you can therefore leverage that machine learning and algorithms to start to replace tasks that may have been very manual across multiple applications in the past. If you were to go to your assets on the next slide, Ron, one of the key ways is to optimize plant productivity by doing things like performing prescriptive maintenance, drawing data through IoT off of the machinery in your organization to understand all sorts of different things that are happening. Maybe you can link costs of goods sold to the products themselves. Maybe you can help to more effectively manage demand. Maybe you can help to more effectively implement effective scheduling. But ultimately, to ensure that you're getting the highest utilization rates possible and you're not experiencing asset downtime, so you can continue to produce goods for your customers. And then lastly, before I pass it over to you, Ron, if we just take a look at the customer, for example, leveraging data, and we haven't switched over quite yet to the next slide, but I guess we lost one slide. But what I was going to talk about was, no, we just lost the slide. What I was going to talk about is really, doing things like leveraging data to improve demand forecasting. So when you are rolling out a new product that you don't really necessarily understand how well it's going to sell, linking attributes within that product to other products that you're already selling to really more effectively manage those types of forecasts, so that you're more accurate and you're actually going to make money off of the products you're rolling out to your customers. So I touched a little bit about, IoT and the shop floor and managing data off of your assets. I think this is a perfect opportunity to pass it over to Ron to talk about a specific example that their team worked on with us to deliver real tangible benefits to a customer. So, Ron. And Ron, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you, Nick. As you mentioned, this was a project that we started a few years ago. We got engaged. It was one of those just conversation I remember I was having with kind of our sponsor there, and they were just talking about the issues and challenges they were having with the corporate mandate that they had to embrace industrial automation, especially industrial IoT. And so it's a company that's very progressive. They're probably one of the foremost world-renowned leaders in the manufacture of glass, ceramic, and cooktop surfaces. So if you go in your kitchen and you got one of those nice smooth surfaces, if you look up in the top corner, it's got a little K with a circle on it. That is probably our customer, Eurocara, and they're based right here in South Carolina, where I'm at. So kind of the real meat of this story is the customer that has got some very bright folks and some very automated processes, and huge investments in equipment, like a lot of customers have, right? So the challenge was, as they went out and on their own had worked on trying to connect and work with those machines in an industrial fashion, and because of the volume and complexity, quickly ascertained that, wow, this is not really doable on a very large scale basis. So that's when our team really got engaged. And so by coming in and helping them with an innovative platform that then brought a lot of simplicity to the machine connections, and then ultimately the transformation of that data into very valuable information. This team really was now on a journey that they could really take control of their industrial IoT needs and start to really hit the marks on the corporate mandate. So this was a thing that where it was going to impact how they saw downtime. This was going to impact how they saw information from the shop that's being logged real time for the streaming analytics. Also giving information to all the various stakeholders within the organization, so they really knew that, you know, OEE on a given basis and what was really driving productivity. Scrap is a huge part of their world, and the customer and the folks that can keep scrap at the lowest and the most optimal levels obviously are going to maximize profitability and have a competitive advantage. And so all these things through this process, the customer embarked upon this journey. They're now kind of live and operational and starting to see all these benefits and being able to monitor and measure their manufacturing performance in ways that they've really only dreamed about doing. And so now this is really enabling them to bring in, like what Nick talked about earlier, you know, Industry 4.0, living and breathing day in and day out, right? This is what they're doing. They're on that journey. Now they're starting to look at more ways that they can have exception-based analytics, driving the alerts off the various production lines in a very real way, having various connected processes for material delivery, how robots are going to come into play of all this. So we're really starting to think about the future and what that looks like. And it really just probably connects all the various things that our presentation today touched on in a very real way. Every customer is going to translate this to what is important to them for this journey. And my recommendation from a longtime solutions architect and implementer, start small, get those wins, let everybody start to see some results, right? It doesn't have to be the big bang everything. You'd be amazed at how some of those small impactful projects can change the course of a company long term and change the DNA and ultimately change the ultimate direction and what you'll go and what you'll do. So with that, Paul, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Nick. So, you know, I think there are a number of takeaways from today's presentation. I want to thank the three of you for your insights today. I also want to give the opportunity to our viewership to submit any questions that you have. There is a QA button available within the application, within the Teams application. But I do have a question that has come through. And I'm going to preface this question with a couple of thoughts. Number one is obviously that, you know, the future is now. I think we addressed that to a degree last week, and we've landed on it very firmly this week, and we've seen some practical examples of that. My feel is that there are a number of people out there who go, this is amazing, and at the same time are taking a very large and very deep breath as they go, okay, how do I get from where I am to this? Now, Ron, you talked about, you know, look for the short wins, look for the small wins, look at where the most impactful areas are. I think the incoming question is more about, okay, I'm looking at my data, my multiple sources of data within my manufacturing environment. I know that if I need to make a change, that I need to work on my data. I need to prepare my data for the next phase. What is your advice with regards to how to approach that? That's a very big open question. What advice would you give to our listeners with regards to what should you be doing with your data now in order to leverage the best of this future state moving forward? I'm opening that up, Ron. I'm going to ask you. I think you're on mute.
Got it, Paul. Thank you. I'll take one approach, and I'm sure that Nick and Mike have probably a couple of other angles to this. That really is a great question. You know, we see that a lot of times when folks are doing their, you know, they're planning to move on to a new enterprise application. Maybe they're moving to the cloud now, which, you know, an enormous amount of manufacturers have a lot of interest in taking out the complexity, and they want to move to cloud and thus data, data constructs, cleaning up things, right? Running some routines, and so that the old habits and the old process doesn't manifest itself necessarily into the new system. So if you're looking at it from that angle, absolutely spend time on that data cleanup. Make sure you have the right focus from your teams. We don't want to have duplicate and redundant data, because there again, that data and any errors that may manifest itself, this will inhibit our ability to make really accurate decisions future state. The other part of that, from just if you look at multiple systems and the fact that we're pulling data from multiple sources, how do we really get a homogeneous look at that and an upper level from kind of a combined analytics perspective? The good news is there are techniques and capabilities now within these analytic and AI platforms to where you can go in, you can kind of set the business rule to thou hand to take and transform that data, and then that transformation will be set one time, and then from then on, all that data being pulled from multiple sources, maybe published into a data lake, for example, will automatically be transformed based on those business rules, so that you really won't have to deal with how the multiple systems may be different. You're looking at it in a combined view, whether that's enterprise data connected to Salesforce, for example, or other systems, right? They all have different ways of looking at things, but the good news is these platforms have evolved so much. They've gotten so smart, and they have a lot of capabilities in there to automate these historically very difficult tasks, because it led itself to having a IT degree to be able to get in and do the transformations. Now it's all standard part of the platforms, and it's much easier to do.
Yeah, to add on to that, Ron, so I think agree 100%, and we've seen that as well with a lot of customers that are making that upfront investment, especially as they transition to cloud or go through an ERP upgrade, to help conform and massage the data. And so that way, the net is on consumption, on reporting, on analytics. You're dealing with like-for-like data models that make it much easier to process this information. One of the other challenges that we tend to also see in this in our customer base and in the industry is also this tendency to want to squirrel away as much data as possible. So we often have, and we often see a lot of our customers that have 20 years, 30 years of ERP data that they just want to lift and shift up into the cloud, and they want that to be available within their enterprise application. And I think it warrants taking a step back and actually going through with a fine-tooth comb to really understand, is this data that we need for compliance purposes? Is this data that we need for historical reporting? Or is this still, to this day, operational data that we use in day-to-day business operations and reporting? And actually defining and grouping and tiering the quality of that data and what function it presents today. And so does some of this data belong in the ERP for master data, for codes and so on, for certain? But some of that data may only present value in a historical reporting context that might be great for identifying patterns and trends over time. And so perhaps some of that data may be best shelved into something like a data lake approach, where it's always there, always available for ad hoc querying, analytics, and then pulling that into a more refined capacity and capability here. So I think everything you said, Ron, 100% accurate and true. I think it also warrants and really does encourage a lot of the people out there that are looking to make these digital transformations to also take stock of, well, what kind of data do we even have in our enterprise to begin with, and actually going through and doing that evaluation too.
Thanks, Mike. Nick, I will open the question up to you and see if there's anything you want to add to that. I hate to put you on the spot.
No, I mean, I think Mike's obviously the data expert here at Infor from an Infor operating service standpoint. So I will defer to him. But yeah, I think that sums it all up.
Good stuff. Well, gents, I know we're reaching the end of our time here. I want to really take a moment to thank all three of you, Nick, Mike, and Ron. I think you've provided a lot of food for thought, some very practical examples and real case scenarios where our manufacturers out there can really look towards the future and what a potential future transformation will really do for them. And so, yeah, I want to thank you for that. It's been fascinating.
Thank you.
And for everyone else, you're very welcome. Thank you. for everyone else, we hope that you're going to join us for the remaining 2 webinars in this particular series of the power of modern ERP for manufacturers. They are scheduled for both remaining Thursdays in October at 2 p.m. Eastern. And of course, you're welcome to go back and access the on-demand version of this or the first roundtable webinar in our series. A final reminder is that any participant who attends 3 or more of these webinars will be invited to a free 2-hour consultation with us here at TEC to discuss any issue related to enterprise software, as well as a 1-hour consultation with each of the vendor whose webinar you attend. So with that, I'm going to thank you very much for your attendance today. Thanks again to our speakers, and wish everyone a safe continued day and a healthy continued day, and we look forward to hosting you again this time next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.